on the tracker today. So while we're waiting for our 2.5-inch lift and our almost 32-inch tires that we got coming for it and wheels. So before we can do all that, because one, I don't have it yet, and then two, we need to do this stuff anyway, I want to make this thing run a little better and more reliable. So I have a laundry list of things that I want to do to it, and then we'll just check it off as we go. So that I'm not sitting here talking about it for too long. Basically, these arrows are things that could be attributing to the idle. So I'm going to fix these things first before we start tackling things in the throttle body and stuff and messing with the throttle body to try to compensate maybe for a problem that's actually coming from somewhere else. A lot of it could be wiring, and then I'm 99% sure the valves are adjusted too tight. So we're going to adjust that as well. I suspect the valves, well, I'll talk about that when we go to do it. So first things first, we're going to do some removal of some components and just engine compartment cleanup. I'm going to take off a lot of the aftermarket stuff they have and then kind of go over some of the repairs that have been made to the wiring in this thing in the past. There's a pretty goofy one that we're going to tackle first that I think could be pretty entertaining once I cut open the tape. So anyway, let's get going on it. This should be a pretty good one, and it's a great thing to do. You want reliable on a trail. If it's stuck, that's one thing. If you're stuck because it won't run, that's another. That's a problem you don't like to have. So let's get looking at it, and we'll see what we run into. All right, one of the first things that I noticed on this thing while I was kind of poking around is all this extra wiring. I'm not sure what a lot of this does. This I suspect is maybe the fog lights that they have down here, or maybe the stereo inside. We're going to wire that the right way. We're going to eliminate all this wadded up stuff. We don't need things more complicated than they need to be. And then I do notice that this is the relay panel or the fuse panel. These have like the heavy duty fuses, and the power wire going to it has been repaired. There's a crimp connection here, a ton of corrosion, a bunch of electrical tape, and then what feels like a hose clamp in there. So I'm going to cut this open and see what they actually did there, and we're going to repair this the right way and get rid of these, kind of get it done type fixes that they got going on in here. And there's nothing wrong with get it done fixes, but I kind of want this thing to be a little more reliable than what I suspect is a connection made via a hose clamp right here. So now we're just fighting the tape to get it off, and it is a hose clamp in there. So they spliced two battery cables together with a hose clamp. That's a very clever and a very handy side of the road fix, but that is not a long-term fix. That will corrode over time and cause a lot of problems for you later, and that's not the type of thing you want to be dealing with on a trail. I'd rather be dealing with being stuck or something like that than dealing with a get her done fix on the side of the road that we left long term. So I'm just going to continue cleaning up wiring and removing all this aftermarket wiring and the cruise control wiring, which kind of appears to be aftermarket, even though I think it's actually factory, but it's its own harness. So it's really easy to pull all that stuff out, and just kind of makes everything a lot simpler in the engine compartment there. All right, so I found a terminal. So these are actually all connected on the inside, but then it's insulated that way. So this is how we're going to make it, and this will be nice too, because if we do end up adding a little winch to this thing, this will give us a place we can hook up to it. So all these will be live, hot. I'm going to have to come up with some terminals. Probably what we're going to end up doing is just putting some vacuum caps over it, just so you don't accidentally touch it with a wrench or something while you're messing with it. And then I'm going to make sure I put it down low enough so we can still get to that strut bolt. We're actually going to be getting to that fairly soon. So I'm just going to try to eyeball it so it looks real good. And I'm just going to put it right there. And then I got a little transfer punch. And these are great. They come in all sorts of sizes, and then it makes it so you just kind of give her a tap there, and it puts a exact center punch on it, and then the same on that side. So we're actually going to, you could just put this in with self-tapping screws, and that's okay, but if you have thread inserts, it's actually not very difficult to just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to drill that first one and put the insert in, and then we'll do the other one afterwards, just in case we slightly end up missing. It's very thin sheet metal, so these thread inserts actually are a pretty good idea to do. And this is my favorite tool for the most part, unless you're doing thicker, bigger stuff. You don't even need the wrench to hold it. You can just hold it with your hand to compress them. And I like doing those with a drill, not an impact, because the impact, it's really hard to tell how tight you get. And then it's real easy to go too tight on accident. All right, so now I'll just transfer punch that other side, and we'll get a thread insert in that one, drilling it out and thread insert. Then we're going to shorten up all the battery terminals, all the ones that went to the positive side of the battery. We're going to shorten those up and just make them the right length to go to our terminal block. They can go to any one of those studs. They're all connected to the same. I'm going to use a Harbor Freight hydraulic crimper on them, and then heat shrink around the crimp and to seal up so water doesn't get into the strands of the battery wire. And that works out really well. I do that a lot. I've had really good luck with it, and yeah, I really that's a handy tool to have. And you have a pretty bulletproof battery system once we're done here. And that'll be real nice on the trail. That's not one thing that you're kind of fighting. And it is one of a very common thing to see people struggling with is battery type stuff out on the trail. It's just one of the things you kind of don't think about. And then you just stick a battery on it real quick, get it started, and then go wheeling. And then next thing you know, your vehicle won't start or whatever because you're having battery terminal issues or battery issues, electrical system issues. So the cleaner you can make this, the better. And that's what I'm doing. So I'm repurposing a battery here. This is a battery out of a truck, out of the red work truck that we have. When I bought that thing at auction, it stated that it needed a battery, but then when I got there, it actually had a new battery in it. So I ended up with an extra battery, and it was a good battery. I shouldn't say it was new. It wasn't very old, but it was dead. It just needed a jump start. It wasn't a bad battery. So anyway, now I'm fixing our mount for our coil, and that had those ground wires going to it, so we need to make sure that has good connection. And then I'm actually going to replace the coil with the stock one. I personally don't like running those performance coils on stock ignition systems. They tend to be harder on the distributor, on the pickup and stuff inside there, or if you have points, it's harder on the points. Excuse me, and that type of thing. So I like running the stock one on stock ignition system. We want reliability. We don't need any little tiny minute performance gain we would have gained from that performance coil. So now we're adjusting the valves. So take the valve cover off while we have the ignition spark plug wires and stuff off. Take the valve cover off, and then you adjust it. So you just adjust it while the valve's all the way closed. A good way to know it's all the way closed is just look and watch for the other valve on that cylinder to be open. They're in pairs there. So if the other valve's open, you know the valve you're going to be adjusting is the closed one. And then you just loosen the nut around around there. And then take a screwdriver and spin the set screw out. There shouldn't be any load on that. They should just freely come out. And then get your feeler gauge in, and then just tighten that adjustment screw until there's no play in it. And again, that's just with your fingers. You're just taking the slack out, and then you tighten your jam nut around it, and that holds it right where it needs to be. And that's how you do it. So you're doing seven on the intake, and no, you're doing 6 on the intake and 7 on the exhaust. 7 thousandths on the exhaust, 6 thousandths on the intake, and then just work your way down it. You could turn the engine with a 17 millimeter socket on the balancer there. If you take the spark plugs out beforehand, the engine spins real easy. You may even be able to, if you do it that way, to spin it just by grabbing the belt and spinning it. Just make sure you don't pinch your fingers between the belt and the pulley. That actually is something that kind of happens a lot. So now I'm just replacing the valve cover gasket. So to adjust the valves, it basically costs you a valve cover gasket. I wouldn't try to reuse it. They're cork. I don't know if the factory ones are cork or not, but the only replacements I've found are cork on it, or at least the only ones they have in stock are cork. And anyway, replace it, and it also comes with new seals around the bolts. And now just hook up your vent line, and I'm going to replace my PCV valve. Those could cause erratic idling issues as well. They basically could act as a vacuum leak if they're not working properly. So I'm just going to replace it. Those are very inexpensive, like $3.99. It's just a safe bet to go ahead and change that thing out while you're in there doing all this stuff. So now I replaced the plugs with a double platinum Autolite, a pretty cheap platinum Autolite plug. Nothing special. Gap. You just watch your gap. The gap is also on that sticker up on the hood. What your spark plug gap should be. I think it's 28 thousandths on this one. And then I'm repurposing a half set of V8 spark plug wires that I just happen to have. That is not the cheaper way to go if you don't happen to have them. The spark plug wires for this thing are about $15 or so at AutoZone. And there may be better sets available as well. Stock sets should be fine for this thing. It shouldn't be an issue. Just to have a stock set. These are a performance set. I just happen to have them. They were actually out of stock on the spark plug wires at the auto parts store, so it's convenient that I had them. So I just went ahead and added terminal ends to the end. That is definitely not the cheaper way of doing it. Now you see me, I was cleaning out the throttle body. And then I did it while the engine was off, cleaned it out, and then just kind of stick your foot to the floor and start it. And let that all pass through. It shouldn't harm anything, but I would try to do it when the engine was cold, other than when it's hot, because that way it's not trying to burn that stuff in the cat converter. It'll just kind of pass through it. And now I'm timing it. So to time these ones, I don't think you need to actually disconnect the vacuum line on it. They seem to be hooked to a ported vacuum, so it's running the same. You can't, just to be safe, take that vacuum line off the distributor. To time it, but it's 8 degrees at idle, so just make sure it's warmed up and idling at 800 RPM, and then you time it to 8 degrees before top dead center. Simple as that. Now I'm rigging up the intake with a hose clamp just to kind of securely mount it, and we're done. That's going to sum up my day for today on this thing, but we got a lot done, and we have a pretty darn clean engine compartment now. Not actual clean, we still need to wash it, but clean as far as simplicity, and it's very simple, and that's kind of what I'm going for. If our AC system, when we get to that, ends up not working, it's going to even be simpler yet. We can remove that. The only problem with doing that is it also runs the power steering pump. It's almost like the two kind of go hand in hand. So I may have to leave the compressor there just for an idler pulley, because I think that's how it gets its adjustment, the tensioning on that. So I would lose power steering if I took the AC off. So I'm hoping we can fix it. It's such a simple system, I can't see too much being wrong with it. So we fixed the idle. One of the things we did today, fix the idle. We don't know, we adjusted it and stuff, but we don't know what actually fixed it, but we fixed it. We adjusted the valves, that could have done it. We removed the cruise control and stuff, that possibly could have done it as well, because that could have been a vacuum leak or something like that, because vacuum line goes to it. So we took that out and plugged it. Removed the alarm system. That didn't have anything to do with it, but it sure did make it a lot cleaner in there. We did fix the coil and the mount and that ground. That could have been relating to it. We secured the intake. That wasn't it, but we got that fixed up. And then that stuff's all going to be for later. And then we cleaned up the wiring and installed the battery and cleaned up that battery, and it looks good. All right, well, thanks for watching. Up next on this guy is the bikini top from Best Top. So we're going to get that installed on here, and we'll see how good that fits. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.